I am joined today with Marco Imperiale, the founder and managing director of Better Ipsum, to discuss his new book, Practicing Legal Design, published by Globe Law and Business. Marco, thank you so much for joining me today. Firstly, I want to ask you what prompted you to write the book now?
Oh, wow. That's a $1 million question. I think it's just a matter of stars lining, Sian asked me, would you like to do a book about legal design? And my approach was, yes, why not? But, the structure of the book, the the differences between this book and the other books, whether on legal design or similar matters, were the most important part of the discussion because this is a book about practice more than about theory. It's a book different than other articles, blogs, and titles on the matter, and at the same time, a strong focus on concept like client centricity and um, wearing the user's shoes, which may be very relevant for general counsels, law firm partners, and last but not least, heads, PSLs, universities. So it's a wide range book, but the starting point is client centricity and user centricity more than legal design.
Well, that actually ties perfectly in with my next question, which what are some of the most surprising ways that legal design can improve the relationship between lawyers and clients?
Well, another very interesting questions. Let me start this way, and I know that this assumption may be a little bit, I wouldn't say groundbreaking, but I don't know how lawyers would react to a sentence like this. I don't think that lawyers really know their clients. That's the starting point. I think that they assume that they know their clients. Now, when you speak with them and you ask, when was the last time you had a listening session, 1 hour listening session? When was the last time you did some feedback sessions, you did some surveys with your clients, and especially in big firms, there are surveys and feedback and marketing departments doing that. But then you realize that it's very rare that partners are reading this data, and so there's a disconnection between what's happening, in marketing. They have wonderful CRMs and wonderful business development activities, and what partners are doing. And so the idea is. You think you know clients very well. Let me guess it. And then think about how your clients are reading your instructions or your emails. What kind of support and device they're using. Maybe they are neurodivergent. Maybe they're visual thinkers. Temple Grandin is telling us that 2/3 of the people are visual thinkers of two different kinds, while lawyers, journalists, politicians tend to be verbal thinkers. And the relevance you give to words, you give to clauses are different. And lawyers think that they co-create with clients, but what they are doing in practice is having conversations with client. Okay, we should put this clause here, this clause that, this number here, this number that, here and there. But co-creation is something different. It's working together with the client. And that brings a lot more considerations because you think in a different way in terms of hierarchy and collaboration between partner and client. You think in a different way in terms of the added value you are providing to the client. Because in one case, it's your knowledge, your expertise. In the other case, is being a trustable partner in this never-ending journey. And so there are very interesting considerations to be done. So I would say that client centricity is where this book shines, and I think that whether law firm partners, whether heads, whether general counsels can think about client centricity in a different way. That's probably the main insight for this book, and all the various parts of the book are just a big general reflection about, huh, we think we know the final users. Maybe we should be a little bit more humble.
Wow, okay, very interesting. You mentioned Journey, and I know that you like to blog, and you've walked the Camino de Santiago 11 times now, which is very impressive. So, congratulations. Is there
Oh,
a
thank
parallel between the pilgrimage experience and the process of innovation or personal transformation?
you. That was not an unexpected one. Well. Well. So you mentioned the blog, and we should say to the listeners or
Yes.
readers that I have a personal blog. So I have, there's the activity with Better Ipsum, but I have a personal blog on marcoimperiale.net, and in this blog I speak about, everything from blockchain to the sense of life, Zen, music, and whatever. And yes, I've done the Camino de Santiago multiple times. And by the way, on the second one, I also wrote a book about that, but that's
Oh,
another story. Yep, stjamesteps.com. That said, that said, I don't think that doing a pilgrimage, or, you can do it as a walk, cutting out also the spiritual element. So doing a walk in the woods of Galicia and writing a book can be similar experiences. But there's a but. And so first of all, doing several weeks a year, maybe 2 or 3 weeks a year, sometimes 1.5, to empty your mind, it's very useful when you're doing strategy. But that's not the point. The point is that I've noticed that the hardest part is starting. So we think about the writing, we think about the drafting, we think about the editing, we think about the research, we think about the promotion, we think about the marketing, we think about, everything that comes with a book. But when there's this idea in your mind, the hardest part is move. Because when you think about all the effort that is required, whether it's doing the Camino de Santiago or doing a book, you don't do that. So there's a recklessness that we need to have in order to take a leap of faith and say, somehow, some way, this project will end. Somehow, some way, this walk will end. Because when you think about the fact that you're sacrificing your vacation, when you think about the fact that you know, most of the nights you will sleep in hostels, so you won't sleep very well. And, there's the Galician sun, and, things can go nuts.
mhm.
And you don't do that. And plus, there are so many reasons. Maybe you gotta move from your house A to the house B, and this taking a lot of energies. Maybe you have difficulties in relationship. Maybe you are afraid for what would happen to your parents if you're so many weeks away. I mean, there are so many reasons not to do. Then the action and the starting is probably the hardest part at all. Same for innovation projects in law firms. Same for innovation projects in department. Most of the time, we think about something that can be done, but there's something stopping us. And there are so many reasons not to do innovation projects. There are so many reasons not to do AI driven strategies in law firms and corporate legal departments. And yes, there are reasons to do that, but there are many reasons not to do that. And the more we are expanding our mind and getting to the reasons not to do something, the less we are inclined to take that jump. And so analyze the pros, analyze the cons. If you want, you can prioritize the pros and prioritize the cons because not everything has the same value. But then arrives a moment where you gotta go with the guts, and that's the moment where you gotta start. If you stop there, it's weeks, months, years of regret. Plus, there will be always this thing in your mind about, oh, I wish I could have done this, I wish I could have done that. So you feel lighter after, and that's a great feeling.
Yeah, it does sound like it would be a lot lighter following it. You sort of
Yeah.
mention it as kind of like a journey. So, was there a chapter or an idea in the book that evolved significantly from what your original plan was and maybe surprised you during the writing process?
I mean, I shouldn't say this because you're you're supposed to provide a table of contents when you sign a contract. But all the book kind of, shifted as a puzzle, should we add the interviews? Should we know how many? And, how about bringing case studies? What kind of case studies? Should we, the first part, was not supposed to be there because that was supposed to be a totally practice in legal design. So the first part about what legal design is was not supposed to be there. But then you realize that for innovation, PSLs, some in-house counsels, they know what legal design is, but there are some potential readers that they don't know that. And plus, the concept is changing. So, speaking about parts of the book, I would stress the two chapters in different parts about legal design and artificial intelligence, because this is such an evolving, such a fast evolving theme, then when you write something that's already old in in the editing phase. So these two were considerably affected by, you know, all the reflection and the rumination regarding specific aspects. I think that now it stands pretty well. So and I mean, this is fingers crossed, but if you read this book in 2027,
Mhm.
this should be still a go-to book for what I want to share with my audience.
Mhm.
It's not a light statement, but especially these days, but I think that it will stand, and that's one of my goals. But Anna, it's a matter of fact that AI is changing, and legal design plus AI
Mhm.
means that somehow, some way, the discipline we know, you can call it an approach, a methodology, a mindset, but this thing called legal design will be very affected by AI.
Mhm.
And if we don't embrace AI the way it should be embraced, especially regarding access to justice, clarification of concepts, prototyping, and so on and so forth, there's a risk for the discipline. And it's a pity because there's huge potential. And it starts with a matter of fact, which is law should be for people and not people for the law.
Very good. To build on from AI, how do you think that AI can liberate rather than limit the legal profession?
If you think the most influential writers and professors and builders in the AI field, it's pretty clear that it's impossible to make forecast, especially 3 to 5 years from now. You can look at the curve, you can make assumptions, you can look at data in terms of legal tech funding and say, okay, according to Gardner, within 2050, we will have these billions of dollars allocated for legal tech. You can make all these kinds of evaluation. And but at the same time, it's pretty hard. So first of all, I would say that different lawyers means different kinds of AI. So an in-house legal department of a multinational company, a law firm that generates billions of dollars every year, a small solo law firm in Brazil, an access to justice center in the middle of North Carolina, have all different ways of embracing the law. And all of them today are kind of using AI. So once again, how about reversing the narrative and starting from the user? So is there potential in terms of access to justice? Absolutely. Is there potential in terms of knowledge shared and so for people to learn the law and act accordingly? Of course, yes. At the same time, there are so many factors, both, geopolitical factors, or even, code of values for lawyers. What happened with Garfield law in the United Kingdom may not happen in Italy, or maybe one day it happened in France in 2019. The regulator wakes up and say, okay, no predictive analytics startups anymore for legal judgments. This can happen. And so I would say that starting with the user is a good starting point. Being flexible is probably the next reasonable step. Continuing to learn. So make our law firms learning companies more than service companies is the third step. It's probably the hardest one. It's connected with the second one. And the idea is the reflections about the value of what lawyers are providing is becoming key. And it will change from provider to provider and also from client to client. So I think that the wisest thing to do is breathing and reflecting. I know it's very hard because the idea of embracing AI for the sake of embracing AI is very tempting. But have you reflected about the data? Have you reflected about, your internal management? Have you reflected about the way you manage contracts? Because if you add noise to the noise, you just have more noise. How about once again reversing the narrative and think about what will not be substituted by AI so far? So we know that some things may be substituted, some things are, and some things may not be. How about starting from the ones that will not be substituted? How about reflecting on something that won't change 3, 5, 10 years from now? Clients need lawyers. Really? Are we sure that this is not going to change? Clients need to solve problems. And are you sure they need you? I mean, I'm not saying yes or no. I'm not saying this will happen or this will not happen. I think that it's time to reflect as legal professionals, as law firms, as institutions, as corporate legal departments about our added value. And believe me, speaking about it is way easier than reflecting about it. And where you have law firms with tons of equity partners and everybody thinks in a different way, is even harder. So a good starting strategy would be starting with the values of the firm, starting with the purpose, starting with the kind of relationship with the client or the clients you want to have. That's a good starting point. We can start with awareness. The more you are aware of the internal situation, the more you know where you should go. But it's a very difficult decision, and plus, external factors may impact these decisions way more. Who knows what will happen with Harvey and Legora? Maybe they will become law firms because they're internalizing the know-how. We really don't know about that. And we gotta take the risks of our strategy. Take this leap of faith. We can take it, giant leap of faith or small leap of faith. But somehow, some way, this decision has to arrive because even not deciding is a decision on its own.
Thank you. I also wanted to add that I know you currently serve as the chair of the wellbeing community at the Union International Association of Lawyers. What cultural shift do you believe must happen first for wellbeing to become a professional priority?
Oof. I mean, what we're seeing right now, I think it's on the one hand, it's a very critical scenario. Whether we look at depression, suicide rates, alcoholism, drug abuse, divorce rates, for a bunch of factors I could speak for hours about, related about, to where law firms are, what they do, the mindset of the lawyer, the kind of life that lawyers are doing, blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't change if you are in corporate legal departments or in law firms. The scenario is pretty critical. The half full glass is that compared to 10 years ago, we're starting speaking about that. And we're also starting speaking about that because it's a critical factor, not only in terms of sensitivity of the community about, empathy. No, no, it's a critical factor in terms of money because it affects the retention, it affects the sense of belonging of the people, it affects the purpose, it affects the numbers. So coming back to your question, this is what is going to change. The more we look at the numbers and the price of not taking care of the people, the more the more we look the more we look at these elements, the more we will start to make initiatives. And on the short term, I don't believe that investing in well-being is a very wise decision because it will affect your revenues. I'm sorry about that. You will bill more hours. You will have more people interacting instead of working. You will have people taking days off for longer maternity and paternity leaves. That's the starting point. On the other hand, if you look at the mid to long term, that's another decision. So as long as the law firms and the legal departments are looking at numbers, and as long as they decide to have a longer term strategy, which is very related to sustainability, because you got to think about what's going on after you, and not a short term one, I think that there's enough on the table to be optimistic. But I'm very, how can I say, straight to the point. The more we look at the numbers, the more we look at the money, the better the possibility is for well-being to become a core priority in law firms and legal department. The more we think about the subjective lens, okay, we have, this person are tending to burn out, and we have these, neurodivergent players who are struggling on a daily basis. I wouldn't say the less we are impactful, because that would be probably brutal, but we would not have the same effect.
Mm.
So speaking about the money effect, especially if I think about the companies that they know or the partners that they know, it's a way more effective strategy. So if we really want to take care of the people, including neurodivergent ones, I think that bringing some KPIs and ROIs, bringing in the costs of not investing on people, bringing in the costs of burnout, bringing in, the costs of having your client that is changing three associates because everybody's leaving the firm, then it's a good starting point for better conversations on the matter.
Okay.
Does it sound
And
brutal?
no, no, it was a good answer. To tie in for what you were saying about looking to the future, when you imagine the lawyer of the future, what kind of human being do you hope that they will be?
Well, unfortunately, I don't have the crystal ball. And even when we think today's lawyers, I mean, there's someone that is doing compliance, someone is doing litigation, someone is doing restructuring, someone is doing anti-money laundering, someone is doing banking and finance, someone is a 65 years old equity partner in a big law firm in the United Kingdom, United States with millions in the bank, and someone is a small law firm in southern Italy with not enough to live. So it even now it's pretty hard to conceptualize the concept of a lawyer. And if I look at the future, I tend to make lots of comparison with doctors. And so, how would I imagine the doctor of the future? And we think about the doctor as someone who heals, but maybe we will be more aware with artificial intelligence, genomics, whatever, about our current state. And the doctor will be the ones indicating specific strategies. So the preventive part will be a priority. And there's a chapter in the book about proactive law. This is something I really care about because in the legal field, especially in the litigation world, we think about preventive and reactive. So avoiding litigation or going to litigation as the two main strategies we have. But what about adding a third strategies, which is a proactivity, bringing the KPI and ROI of specific decisions? So how about lawyers being the advocates for proactive lawyering? This is not an easy strategy because it means learning processes, it means learning not only people and law, but it means also speaking in numbers, or speaking in spreadsheets, speaking in forecasting, speaking about AI. And yes, lots of lawyers are telling that they are, pretty proficient with AI. But when you get into the statistics, when you get into data management, when you get into process management, when you get into, cybersecurity, that's a bit different. And so the idea is lawyers way more inclined to proactive lawyering and way more business companions of their clients, because I suspect that unless the regulator thinks in a different way, most of the activities that lawyers are doing won't be done by lawyers anymore. Post job. And in that case, you will need a lawyer only if someone wants you to have a lawyer, or only if you want someone else to take the responsibility of what you're doing. And the idea of all the law will be done by lawyers, yes, if the regulators want you to do so, because otherwise the client will not pay a price for something he can take care on his or her own.
Mm.
On the other hand, the experience, the background, the view of the lawyers may help clients making strategic decisions. And how you do evaluate strategic decisions? Strategies, management, KPI, ROI. And so let's look at law in a proactive way and not necessarily in a preventive and reactive one.
Good. And one more question, just because to neatly summarize, for those who haven't read your book yet, how would you describe what the core of this book is really about?
The basic answer would be something like this is a book about legal design, what it is, why it's useful, and why you should act now. If we want to scratch a little bit the surface and go a little bit deeper, is a book about understanding that A, we don't know the final user, whether it's the client, the citizen, the consumer. B, learning to know this consumer better and learning how to co-create with this person in mind. This will not only be useful for the final user, but this will make us also better lawyers. So this is not only a book in order to learn a specific discipline. To me, it's a book about becoming better lawyers.
Thank you so much. It has been so interesting talking with you today and hearing everything and, getting to know a little bit more about the book.